Welcome to my channel, where your adventure into the future starts right now. Step into a vibrant universe filled with groundbreaking technology, breathtaking alien landscapes, and exhilarating sci-fi narratives that challenge your imagination. From daring explorations of distant galaxies to haunting journeys through dystopian societies, we uncover the most captivating stories and innovative ideas that will shape the world of tomorrow. Subscribe today and join us on an incredible intergalactic voyage that promises to inspire and thrill. The Galactic Empire had long been a dominant force in the galaxy. With its far-reaching influence and vast military, it had brought order to worlds far and wide. The Empire's claim to peace was always built on a foundation of power and control, with the constant assertion that its iron grip was what kept the galaxy from spiraling into chaos. Its bureaucratic apparatus was vast, extending to the farthest corners of known space, with fleets of ships patrolling every sector. Its enforcers were present on every planet, making sure that laws were followed and that those who dared defy the Empire's will were swiftly and ruthlessly punished. But beneath the surface of this vast empire lay a deep tension and unspoken truth that the peace it so claimed was fragile, held together not by mutual respect or understanding, but by the fear of retaliation. Empires, as history had shown, were not immune to instability. Revolts, uprisings, and cracks in their foundations were inevitable. The moment any faction or people within the galaxy began to feel the sting of tyranny, resistance would begin to form. Yet, the Empire saw itself as an eternal force, dismissing any notions of rebellion as mere inconveniences that would be easily quashed. That illusion, however, began to falter when the Empire came across the peaceful planet of Gathian. Gathian was a world far removed from the bloodshed and warfare that had plagued many other systems. The planet was known throughout the galaxy for its unwavering commitment to peace, diplomacy, and neutrality. The inhabitants, the Luminara, were a race of highly intelligent beings who valued knowledge, intellectual pursuits, and harmonious relations with other species. For centuries, Gathian had remained outside the affairs of galactic politics, content to observe rather than intervene. The Luminara had always been a delicate people in the eyes of others, delicate in their ways, their values, and their preference for soft power over hard measures. Yet their influence was undeniable. They had, over time, forged alliances with various factions across the galaxy, playing a role in shaping the political landscape, but always from the background. Their neutrality had earned them the respect of many, and they had never sought to be part of any larger galactic power. However, the arrival of the Galactic Empire marked a turning point. In the early days of the Empire's expansion, Gathian had remained resolute in its decision to remain independent. Despite the Empire's overtures to join its growing ranks, the Luminara had consistently rejected them, choosing to remain autonomous, wary of becoming entangled in the Empire's ambitious and often violent reach. But the Empire, in its arrogance, saw Gathian's neutrality as an obstacle. The riches the planet could provide, its strategic location, and its stable governance made it a perfect prize for the Empire. And so, they decided to force the Luminara into submission. The Imperial fleet arrived without warning. Massive warships descended from the sky, their engines humming with a chilling precision, their firepower on full display. For the first time in centuries, the inhabitants of Gathian found themselves facing the threat of war, and the weight of that threat loomed over them. They had never known true conflict, not in the way that many other systems had, but they were not so naive as to believe that their way of life could simply be ignored by an empire hungry for control. The Luminara, with their centuries of diplomatic experience, chose to respond in the only way they knew best, by sending a diplomat to meet the Imperial forces. This diplomat, Alder, was among the most esteemed figures in the galaxy. She was a master of negotiation, known for her eloquence, her unshakable calm, and her ability to sway even the most stubborn of leaders with her reasoning. Her reputation was not only built on her intellectual brilliance, but on her ability to maintain composure in the face of even the most trying situations. Alder's task was simple: to preserve the peace of Gathian through dialogue, to find a way to convince the Empire to leave them in peace. She believed deeply in the power of diplomacy, and the belief that even the most formidable forces could be swayed by reason and dialogue. When Aldera first arrived on the Imperial flagship, she was met with an air of indifference, a cold reception that matched the metallic, lifeless halls of the ship. Grand Moff Ralthar, the commanding officer of the fleet, was not known for his subtlety or his patience. He was a man who believed in the power of force and the inevitability of the Empire's rule. His reputation preceded him. He was ruthless, calculating, and had crushed entire systems with ease. The thought of negotiating with him was daunting, but Aldera had faced more difficult challenges in her career. She was prepared for the worst. Ralthar, upon meeting Aldera, did not even bother to feign politeness. His manner was brusque, his words clipped. He wasted no time with pleasantries, immediately laying out the Empire's demands: Gathian's immediate surrender, the disbanding of its defenses, and its complete integration into the Empire. There would be no negotiations, no compromise. It was clear that the Empire expected Aldera to acquiesce to their will or face the consequences. Aldera stood tall, her posture unyielding, and her mind focused. She began speaking, her voice calm and measured. She outlined the long-standing neutrality of Gathian, its commitment to peace, and its refusal to be drawn into any conflict that could potentially destabilize its way of life. She spoke of the history of her people, of how they had survived through diplomacy and understanding, and how the Empire's aggressive tactics went against everything they had built. She appealed to Ralthar's sense of logic, suggesting that Gathian could be of greater value as a neutral ally rather than a conquered world. Ralthar, however, was not interested in reason. He listened to Aldera's words with a detached boredom, his gaze often flicking to the data screens that surrounded him. He dismissed her arguments as idealistic and naïve. To him, Gathian's desire for neutrality was nothing more than a hindrance to the Empire's grand design. He mocked her attempts at diplomacy, arguing that the only peace the Empire would ever offer was the peace of submission. He spoke of the Empire's unchallenged might and the inevitability of its dominance. His words dripped with disdain, and every statement he made further solidified the gulf between their two perspectives. The more Aldera spoke, the more Ralthar's dismissiveness became apparent. He interrupted her frequently, belittling her points, scoffing at her idealism. Aldera felt the frustration begin to build inside her, but she remained composed. She had faced far worse challenges than this. Yet, as the conversation continued, something inside her began to change. Ralthar's words were not just insults, they were attacks on everything she held dear. The Empire, with its iron fist and disregard for life and peace, stood as the very antithesis of everything she had worked for. She could no longer remain the calm, collected diplomat. The time for reasoning was over. In a moment of clarity, Aldera's anger erupted. Her voice, once calm and collected, now rang with an intensity that stunned the Imperial officer before her. The fire of her words burned hot as she unleashed the full force of her emotions. She spoke of the countless worlds that had been crushed under the Empire's boot, the lives lost to its relentless expansion. She decried the hypocrisy of Ralthar's claims of peace, knowing full well that the Empire's version of peace was a peace achieved through domination, through the subjugation of all who would not bend to its will. She told Ralthar that peace was not something to be forced, it was something to be earned, built over time, with mutual respect and understanding. Her fury, though born of frustration, was not blind. She did not attack Ralthar personally, but instead aimed her words at the entire philosophy the Empire represented. She condemned its methods, its disregard for life, and its arrogance. The more she spoke, the more the room seemed to pulse with the energy of her words. Ralthar, who had been calm and dismissive just moments before, now found himself visibly unsettled. He had never encountered a diplomat who dared to speak to him with such unrelenting anger. The dispassionate attitude he had cultivated in his years of service to the Empire began to crack. Aldera's words resonated in the silence that followed, a silence that seemed to stretch on for what felt like an eternity. The coldness of the room, the indifference of Ralthar had all melted away, replaced by something far more powerful. A sense of defiance filled the space, a palpable energy that even the Grand Moff could not ignore. Aldera stood there, her chest rising and falling with the heat of her words, her eyes burning with conviction. She was no longer a mere diplomat. She was the voice of a people unwilling to bend to tyranny. Ralthar, still recovering from the shock of her outburst, managed to regain his composure. He looked at her with a mixture of contempt and amusement. "You are a fool," he said, his voice cold and dismissive once again. "The Empire will crush you, as it has crushed so many others." But Aldera was undeterred. "Perhaps," she replied, her voice now steady, even resolute. "But you will never break the spirit of those who have known true peace. You will never crush a people who are willing to fight for what they believe in. Gathian will stand, no matter what the Empire throws at it." With that, she turned and left the room, her mind already racing with the possibilities of what came next. The Empire had underestimated her, and they had underestimated Gathian. The fire that had burned in her chest would now fuel a resistance not of weapons, but of will. Aldera had shown the galaxy that even in the face of overwhelming odds, even in the face of a galaxy-spanning empire, there was power in standing firm, in speaking truth to power, and in never surrendering one's dignity. The battle for Gathian had just begun. But Aldera Morn, the diplomat who had answered with absolute rage, would not let the Empire destroy everything she and her people had built. She would fight with every ounce of her being, not with weapons or armies, but with the conviction that peace, true peace, was worth fighting for. And in the end, it was that fire, that unyielding spirit, that would be the spark that ignited the flames of resistance.